All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to talk about something really fascinating: how the people in the lands we now call Nigeria governed themselves way, way before any colonial borders were ever drawn. We're going to see how they built these incredibly complex societies without all the stuff we think is essential today. I mean, think about that for a second. We are so used to our modern systems, it's kind of hard to imagine anything else working. But for centuries, hundreds of different groups did exactly that. They created stable, complex societies with their own unique rules and structures. So, how on earth did they pull it off? Okay, first things first, we have to get our heads around the fact that Nigeria, as a single country, is a pretty new idea. Before mapmaker showed up, this whole region was this vibrant tapestry of hundreds, literally hundreds of distinct ethnic groups. You had the Yoruba kingdoms, the Igbo villages, the Hausa Emirates, each one a world of its own. And look, at the end of the day, every single one of these groups had to answer the exact same question that every human society has to face. How do we all live together without chaos? How do we make decisions, settle fights, and keep ourselves safe? And the answers they came up with were absolutely genius. So, to really get how they built these different political systems, we need to look at the ingredients, right? The basic building blocks they used to construct their societies. And there were two that were just absolutely crucial. The first one, and you could argue it's the most important of all, was the lineage system. This was the bedrock, the foundation. It's the simple but incredibly powerful idea that your family is everything. Everyone could trace their roots back to one common ancestor, which created this huge interconnected web of kinship that held the entire community together. And we're not just talking about knowing your second cousins. Your specific spot on this giant family tree decided everything: your right to use land, your duties to others, who you could go to when you were in trouble. Your lineage was your government, your social safety net, and your identity, all rolled into one. Okay, so that's one piece of the puzzle. The second key building block was something called the age grade. This was a really clever way of organizing people that cut across all the different family lines. Basically, if you were born within a few years of someone else, you were in the same group for life. And this is where it gets really smart, because this wasn't just some social club, it was incredibly practical. Think about it. The youngest guys, they're the warriors defending the town. The next group up, they're responsible for public works, building things, clearing roads. The older groups handle disputes. And the very oldest, they become the wise advisors everyone looks up to. It's like a built-in civil service. Here's a great way to think about it. Picture your high school graduating class, but instead of everyone going their separate ways, you all stuck together as a team for your entire lives. And every 10 years or so, you take on a new, more important job for the community. That right there is the power of an age grade. So, you've got these two core ingredients, right? Lineage and age grades. Now, let's look at the two main recipes societies use to cook up a government. First up are the centralized states. These guys built a classic pyramid of power. So, if you look at places like the Great Yoruba Kingdoms or the Hausa Emirates, you see this very clear top-down structure. Right at the tippy top, you have the ruler, the Oba, or the Emir, who was often seen as divine. Just below him, you've got a council of powerful chiefs, his advisors, who could even choose who the next ruler would be. And under them, you have the local village heads, all ruling over the people at the bottom, who were of course organized by their family lineage. The key takeaway here is simple. Power flowed from the top down, period. It was concentrated in one person at the top of that pyramid, and it was a system that was built on a really clear hierarchy and chain of command. But that was just one way to do things. And this leads to a really cool question. What if a society looked at that whole pyramid structure and just said, nah, not for us? What happens then? And that brings us to the complete opposite approach: the decentralized societies. These were groups that totally rejected the idea of having one all-powerful ruler. Instead, they decided to spread the power around. There's this incredible saying among the Igbo people that just sums it all up. Igbo enwe eze. It means the Igbo have no king. Now, that didn't mean they didn't have leaders. It just meant they rejected the idea of putting all that power into one person who rules for life just because of who their father was. So, if it's not a pyramid, what is it? Well, instead of a top-down pyramid, think of a web. Power was shared between the heads of the most important families, councils of elders, and different societies people could join. If you needed to make a big decision, everyone got together. They would talk, they would argue, sometimes for days, until they reached a consensus, a general agreement. It was basically direct democracy, village by village. Alright, let's put these two models head to head just to make it crystal clear. On one side, you've got decentralized systems, one powerful ruler, a top-down structure, and authority that comes from your bloodline. On the other side, the decentralized systems. No single king, power is shared, and you get authority based on your wisdom and what you've accomplished. Just two totally different answers to that same basic question of how to run a society. Okay, so you might be listening to all this and thinking, that's a cool history lesson, but what does they have to do with today? Well, the incredible thing is how much these old systems still matter in modern Nigeria. The amazing thing is, even with a modern government, a president, governors, the whole deal, these traditional structures never went away. The emir, the oba, the local council of elders, they still have huge social and political power in their communities. People often go to them first to settle a dispute or get things done, and they operate right alongside the modern state. And that really leaves us with this big final question to chew on. How do these ancient ideas about top-down power versus community agreements, about respecting elders, about family being everything, how do they continue to shape modern Nigerian life, from a national election right down to a family meeting? The past, it turns out, is never really in the past. It's living and breathing in the present. Thanks for joining me.